All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another awesome interview for the Legends of Be Wealthy. As y'all know, Brett handpicks business owners that are in our Be Wealthy world each week that we can learn more about not only their operating business, but how they've utilized their operating business in the real estate space to generate long-term wealth for them and their families. And so it's really both of those tracks that they're exceeding on an incredible level. And so with that, Brett has selected for us today to dive into our good friend Joe Herrera's world. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Caitlin.
Joe, where are you based out of?
Based out of Vegas. I've been here my whole life. Everybody says nobody's ever born in Vegas, but I was actually,
that makes sense.
Yeah. So born and raised Nevada guy, currently operate our main business out of Vegas. And then we've got teams and agents all across North America.
Well, that's a perfect segue, actually. Tell us about your current business, what it looks like today, maybe how long you've been doing this, a little about your background. Tell us about you, Joe.
Yeah, so I was raised in an unconventional family, like a lot of us are. My family was, my mom left when I was a kid. I was not a great student in high school. Went through some cool trauma experiences there. So when I was 21, I served a mission for my church for 2 years. And when I came home, I faced a fork in the road. It was like, I want to make a lot of money, but I graduated with like a 1.7 GPA. So where am I going to go with this? I really wanted to be a personal injury attorney because I wanted to make a lot of money, and I enjoy debate. And my wife would say arguing. I call it debating. So really, I looked at insurance and real estate. I chose real estate because I was attracted to the big paycheck. Shortly after getting my real estate license, I did pretty good. As a 23-year-old, I was making 150, 200 grand a year. Hired a buyer's agent by the name of Taylor Prince. Taylor was on my team for probably 6 months before I said, hey, let's do this. Why don't we just partner up and we'll create the Joe Taylor Group. I was insecure about my last name because every time I'd go to a listing appointment, somebody would say like, oh, I was expecting a short little Mexican guy. And while I am proud of my Hispanic heritage, I don't even speak Spanish. So I was like, let's create the Joe Taylor Group. So we did in 2005. Killed it for a year, and then the market crashed, and we got into REOs and short sales. We got a contract with the government because Barack Obama was giving, and the federal government was giving money to municipalities to purchase houses. So we did that. Got out of real estate I'm giving you like the Cliff's Notes version of my whole life. Got out of real estate in 2010 on the daily basis. I obviously kept my license, kept the team going. Taylor ran the team. I built a mobile application. We partnered with Shaq. Shaq was Taylor and I's business partner. He tried to get us to go to a strip club. We refused to go. We lost $1 million on an app that didn't work. Got back into real estate in 2014. Opened a brokerage in the meantime. Sold the brokerage. Opened another brokerage. And all the while running a real estate team. We use social media to fuel our business. Last year, we did about 300 transactions from Facebook, generated about $3 million in GCI that way. Transitioned our brokerage last year from a local indie brokerage that we owned to a national brokerage that we're shareholders in a part of. Currently, our business is divided up into segments. So you could go wherever you want with this, Caitlin. Business is divided into segments. Taylor's in charge of our investment business and our ancillary services. So we'll purchase 80 to 100 homes this year. That he runs that whole deal. And then we have ownership, JV and title, mortgage, insurance, trying to get solar off the ground, but it's a train wreck. So that's his world. And then I'm in charge of our retail business, which is currently our team in Vegas, Colorado, Arizona, Utah, Tennessee, DC, Oklahoma, and California. And I'm in charge of our network. We've got 1,400 agents in our network. We're at Real Broker. So we've got a lot of irons in the fire, but that's kind of a 30,000 foot view of my life. That's what they'll talk about at my funeral. So,
well, Joe, it seems like you must have a lot of time on your hands. This seems no big deal, right? It was just 3 pages of notes I just took on your world. Holy crap.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, and I think it works because I have a partner. Like Taylor and I are 50-50 on everything. I have zero in the real estate space. I have zero empathy for a realtor that doesn't want to be a part of a team and pay a split. Cause I'm like, bro, I haven't got more than, forget about, P&Ls. I haven't got more than 50% on any deal that's closed in the last 20 years. So when you tell me I don't want to be a part of a team because I have to give up a split, I have no sympathy for you. But it helps that Taylor is highly capable and he is killing it in his world. I'm pretty capable and I'm trying to succeed in my world. So people for a long time were like, why are you guys partners? Because you look at guys like Brett and he just crushes it, right? And he's got quote unquote partners, but he doesn't have there's no yin and yang. It's basically Brett has to be both. And then he brings people into his world where Taylor and I are yin and yang. And so I think that's what enables us now. Hindsight, I'm like, man, I'm so grateful our world is as big as it is because there's 2 pretty capable people that if our world wasn't so big, we would just eat each other alive. So like the miracle's not what we're doing now. The miracle is that we ever survived as business partners when we basically did the same job for 15 years.
Yeah. I would chicken and egg you. Did the world get bigger as you both got bigger and grew so that then you didn't eat yourselves?
Right.
Versus, well, let me ask you this. Let's go back. So I definitely want to explore your world as it sits today, but I want to talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, the journey to get here, because man, you guys pivot and maneuvered and shifted around the complications that existed in our industry and in the economy while maintaining a really cool partnership. So I want to go back and kind of walk through some of those and learn some trends that we all could probably take in some of our relationships as we're looking forward to a shifting market and a shifting economy today.
Right.
So Taylor comes on as a buyer's agent in your world. You guys work together for about 6 months, and then you say, let's partner together. Was that original partnership kind of just an organic one? Did you guys operating agreement? Here's the business model. Here's the plan. Here's your role. Here's my role. Or was it just hustle on the ground, entrepreneurial?
So I think it was born out of my own loneliness, to be honest. Like real estate's lonely. And depending on what level of production you're at, you either need intense mentorship and coaching, or you need a collaborative partner to be able to look at your world and your business and give you solid advice. So for Taylor and I, it was originally born out of like, I don't want to do this myself. So like, let's do this together. So he and I are very similar in some ways, and we're very different in other ways, which is why we succeed. I hate to say like a marriage, but it's just, we're like a married couple, right? Like we both have common goals. We both have common objectives, but we have different ways of seeing the world. And then we both respect each other's opinions. So believe it or not, like in 20 years of partnership, we've never really had a massive blow up. There's never been like man, I don't know if this is going to work. We have an operating agreement that we originally built in 2006 when we formed, 2005 when we formed the LLC. We've revised it over the years a few times just to add in survivability and if one of us dies, how do we compensate the other spouse and things like that. But it's always just basically been we both work as hard as we can. We bring in as much income as we can. We collectively try to keep our expenses as reasonable as possible. And at the end of the day, he gets half, I get half. So
awesome.
It's pretty organic.
So you guys are crushing it, selling some real estate. Market, when the market was at its peak in Vegas, it was on fire. That then led to a slight implosion. At your peak, was it just you and Taylor at that point, or had you built out some infrastructure as far as on the ops side?
So we always had an operations person. We had buyer's agents more than anything. Like, I think the fact is neither one of us enjoy this showing of properties. Like I respect a few different people. I respect people that can sing. I respect people that can run. And I respect people that over the long haul enjoy showing properties and writing contracts. Because it's just, I don't understand how someone enjoys running. Therefore, I don't understand how someone enjoys showing properties and writing contracts. To me, it just doesn't make sense. So originally our partnership was born a little bit out of me just going like, hey man, why don't you show all the houses? I'll take all the listings. And then he was like, I don't like this that much either. After a while, he's like, why don't we get other people to show all the houses? So we kind of divided up our business where I was in charge of listings. He was in charge of buy sides. And so we pretty much ran like that for years until, so when the market crashed, the first break we got was one of the lenders we worked with had a connection at Bank of America that got us REOs.
Okay.
So then I was like, all right, well, I'll run all the REOs. I'm the listing guy. We then got a second break when a family member was connected to the city of Las Vegas that got, I don't even remember, $8 million, $10 million to buy houses to, for lower income families, buy REOs and then turn them into rentals or flips or whatever. So he ran that. So that was kind of our world for a while. So to some degree, I was still the listing guy. He was still the buy guy, which I was listing the REOs and he was helping the city buy. So it kind of worked that way. It really ran that way until I hit a wall in 2012. So we opened our brokerage in 2010. We sold it in 2012. And I was like, I just can't do this anymore. Like I'm so burnt out on real estate, helping, hiring buyer's agents, firing buyer's agents. Like I was just burnt. And I was on a bike ride. I had an idea for an app that had nothing to do with real estate. So I was like, let me just run with this. We raised $1 million. You run the real estate stuff. He was still a partner in the app. Like everything we've done is 50-50. And I ran with that for 2 years. So at that point, he took over kind of all things real estate and I became mobile application guy, went to South by Southwest, shared the stage with Tony Shea from Zappos, like did cool stuff. It came crashing down in 2014. I came back into the real estate space. And it was at that point, we got exposed to Brett. I don't know, you would know better than I do. I think we went to our first Brett thing in like 2014. Mm-hmm. When I came back into real estate. And then it was like, all right, we've got to do this in a different way.
Sure.
So that was kind of, then we started thinking a little bit differently at that point.
And I would say if you had the line chart, 2014, that bullet point to the growth of where it sits today. So from it going from your retail real estate team, it's now the two of you again, to where you sit today in the massive world you just described for the two of you. That's some explosive growth in an 8-year time period.
Right.
Not just on the operating business side, but on the wealth side as well. To sit and say, we're going to buy 80 to 100 homes this year.
Right.
That's a huge transition in 8 months. So, or 8 months. Well, that would be ridiculous. 8 months. Yeah. In 8 years. That's pretty astonishing. So what were some of those key factors that, or if you had to put some new bullet points on there? One is 2014, you come back to this world. What are some of those 3 or 4 key bullet points that happened or big transitions that happened in those 8 years that changed the trajectory of where y'all went?
Well, just because this is, Brett's Be Wealthy stuff, this is not flattery at all. I think getting exposed to Brett in 2014, we had a title company that brought him here to Vegas, 14, 15, whatever it was. And he spoke at the Smith Center. Taylor went. He came back. He was like, hey, his team at the time, I still remember it was 600 units. His team's doing 600 units. And it was like, holy crap. At the time we were doing maybe 200. We're like, if we could do 600, our whole world, we would be so wealthy. And, and so we got exposed to Brett then. We listened to him, but Taylor and I are very cheap. Like we're just we don't like spending money. So historically, we're budget friendly. Historically, we don't do Tom Ferry stuff. We don't pay to go to Mike Ferry stuff. We don't pay to go to Cheplack stuff. We don't pay to be in rooms. It's just not our thing. So I think I would pinpoint meeting Brett. We came down to the office in Phoenix, sat through his one day, kind of scribble on a whiteboard. Here's my whole world. Mm-hmm. He gave us a binder. We went back and kind of half-assed everything. Sometime another another point would be, so we started a brokerage in 16, our second brokerage. And we kind of built it just so that we could cover our own costs. And then because I'm so good at lead generation, we generate too many leads for our team. It's just always been that way. So then we're like, well, what if we bring on agents that don't want to be on a team, but they just want to be on a split, you know? And so we started messing with that. But there was some point, it must have been, so when did the metric stuff start with Gubernet? Because it was prior to that.
About 2016, 2015, 2016,
Okay.
fall of 2016.
So right around 2016, we were like, we're going all in on Brett. And I told Taylor, I was like, listen, if we're going to do this, we literally have to take his advice. Because we always run everything through the Brett filter, where we're like, all right, well, you know, like, he's not a prophet, right? So like, he'll give us advice. And then sometimes it's like, hey, I was kind of wrong on that, right? So, but I was like, if we're going to do this, we just have to do what he tells us to do. Like, if we say we're doing it this way, he goes, yeah, I think that's stupid, do it this way. We have to actually do it the next way. And I would say that was probably one of the most pivotal points for us, because we've just never listened to anyone other than each other. So it was at some point where I was like, if we're going to do this, we're actually going to listen to Brett and we're going to take his advice. Taylor was 100% on board with that. And it was at that point, we really put our team on steroids, because it was still just a team at that point. We hadn't got into any of the investment stuff. Our team got up to maybe 500 transactions, 600 transactions. He was giving us a lot of guidance on our team and brokerage. And so all of a sudden we found ourselves maybe in 2019, pre-pandemic, going like, dude, we did 700 transactions, 800 transactions. And so now is that kind of that moment where we're like, wow, in 4 years of going to Brett's first event till now, we now have accomplished, we're at now where Brett was then. And then Brett's game changed. And so like, I'm just an open book, but so when it was Brett and Brian, and then Brett and Brian decided to, you know, amicably do their own thing, we didn't get Brett in the divorce. We chose Brett. We were like, well, we want to stay on the Brett side of things, because what we saw was Brian was very team oriented, which we need, but Brett was very investment and wealth building oriented, which is what we ultimately wanted. And so that was kind of the next pinpoint, was 2019, maybe 2020, when we started doing our one-on-one stuff with Brett. And that's when he started talking about wealth building, investment, getting into investments. We had never, one of the frustrations for me going into 19 or whenever it was like, we had seen people buy and flip and purchase houses and make money with it. We had helped them do it. But we got so burnt in the first crash, we bought a couple of properties and got demolished, had them foreclosed, and like cars repoed and all this stuff. It was like, wow. So we were so hesitant to get into the investment space again, because helping people do it, you get your little cut of it, but it's safe. You're not taking any risk.
Right.
So the next big point, I would say, was when Brett got us into real estate investing, probably 2 years ago, that we really started to see our wealth explode.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You guys have been really good operators. If you in the past, 20 minutes that you've shared with us, running an operation and making revenue is relatively natural for the two of you. So I think of the curriculum we talk about in 2 tracks, just like you did. We have the operating business here and we have the wealth business here. And the more we can, the purpose truly of the operating business, obviously when we want to supply opportunity and jobs for people, and creating deal flow and cash flow such that we can go over to the wealth side, is really the whole purpose of running and growing these simultaneously. You guys are really naturally great at the operating side. Entrepreneurially, the two of you together got to the 200 units per year, growing from there and consistently moving forward. You then partner with Brett, you grow it to 600 units. Operating businesses are really easy for you. The pivot to now take those same principles and models over onto the wealth side, and that to have only been 2 years ago that you started doing that, and now you're buying 80 homes a year.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I think creating income for us is easy, but being disciplined enough to turn it into wealth is the hard part. There's so
And
much limiting. What's
go
that?
ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I just think there's so many limiting beliefs around it. So we've always ran good P&Ls without running P&Ls. Like we've always just made sure we make money to feed our families, but we're living we've traditionally lived a rich version of paycheck to paycheck. Like we're not really paycheck to paycheck, but there's no hard statistical information behind our business. It's like we made 40 grand last month each. Yay. Like we didn't know why, we didn't know how, we didn't know where it came from. We just knew we made money. And if we made less money, we would cut expenses or fire people. And so that was like always our business. I think Brett has really taught us fiscal discipline and responsibility and proper evaluation of each business. So right now our world's a little bit convoluted because our investment business is a 7-figure business. Our real estate team's business is a 7-figure business. And our revenue share from our network is a 7-figure business. So it's like, if we don't evaluate them each individually, we can find ourselves in trouble. So Brett is really good with this. He's like, don't tell me how much you make. Tell me what the profit and loss on each of these opportunities is. And that's been a really healthy discipline, because if we're not careful, we can rob from Peter to pay Paul. And while running a really successful real estate team, we could end up sinking all of our money into a poorly ran investment business and see it come in one side and go out the other. So not sure if that makes sense, but we're good at creating money, but we've traditionally been bad at leveraging it into wealth. And that's something that we're in the process of learning. So we started with 300,000 in our investment side 2 years ago. And I believe last I checked, our portfolios of either notes or rental properties is close to 5 million. So it's been a crazy transition for us to go from taking $300,000 cash and leveraging it into 5 million worth of either notes or real estate owned. The benefit or the blessing that we have is with our network bringing in, so our revenue share from real is $100,000 a month. And then our team generates, 6 figures on a monthly basis as well. So we've had the benefit of our investment stuff. We don't take any money from it. So we just keep dumping it in. Yeah. So when we close a property and make 60 grand, we put it back in and go buy more properties. Like we don't have to feed our families with it.
Yeah.
So that's been like, if you look at our income statements, all of our income comes from our team and our revenue share. And then there's this weird investment business we have that keeps gaining value, but we don't take anything from it. So if I didn't have him doing that, I wouldn't have $2.5 million worth of real estate owned, because I own half of it. But if he didn't have me doing what I'm doing, he wouldn't have the freedom to focus on that without worrying about feeding his family. So it's kind of been the calves that milk 2 cows, if you will.
Yeah, it seems, and what I have the luxury of having a behind the scenes peek into some of your business operations by working with Whitney. But it seems as though that partnership and that trust and delineation of role and responsibility has been a incredible and critical part of your business. I know that you have and teach a lot on your operating business. Social media wise, you guys are some of the best in the country at creating and converting leads for your real estate business and your locations. I want to go through each of your business lines. So we have the operations business here. We have your investment business here. I'm obviously very visual. And over here, we have your network that has become an equal third leg in that stool of creating wealth and opportunity for y'all. So I'd like to start here at the operating business side. You have your retail real estate business, and then you have locations. I think you named 7 or 8 of them.
Right.
How did you choose those locations? Was that based upon the lead flow you created in social media? How do you pick where to go and what to do?
So it's jockey based for us. Like
Okay.
I could tomorrow create 200 Zillow quality leads in Phoenix for $10 to $20 a piece if I wanted to. So like for me, I could go into any market and start generating leads. It's all for us about finding the right jockey. So we just have to find the right person to partner with and run with. So it's been part of our network is when somebody will join Real. We've got, like I said, 1,400 partnerships across North America. So when somebody joins and we're like, hey, like, what are you doing? We always do business evaluations with them. So it's like, what are you doing for leads? How big is your team? Whatever. So like what we're doing now is we're just going to war with Zillow. And so like if we bring on a team who's a big Zillow team, and if they're not on Zillow Flex, which I'm not a big fan of Zillow Flex, if they're still paying traditional money to Zillow, I'm like, well, so you're spending $8,000 a month to get 40 leads from Zillow. They're like $200 a piece. For that $8,000, we could generate 300 opportunities for you that close at the same amount. Again, this was a Brett idea. So why do we stay with Brett? Why do we never track our what am I thinking? Our return ROI with Brett is because a month and a half ago, Brett was like, Joe, you're so good at lead generation from Facebook. Why don't you just go do that for people? So I was like, great idea, Brett. And now, so we've signed up like 5 people we're doing this for. We've created a $250,000 a year business. And so far in the last 6 weeks, because Brett said, hey, Joe, why don't you go do this? Like that's so valuable. Side note, but anyways, so we're now doing expansion, meaning we just do it for people and they don't pay us anything. Then we're also doing lead generation for others where they just pay us for our labor. Either way, I'm cool with it.
Yeah, that's such a cool opportunity, not only in partnership, in your network, just
Right.
to be able to take that and help other people to build their individual businesses or their business in partnership with you is unbelievable. So over here on that operating business side, we have all of those locations. And how many total agents do you have working with you in your retail business?
We have just under 150 agents that are on splits with us.
Okay. And how many transactions do you think you'll do this year?
Somewhere in between 1,000 and 1,200. So
okay, that's a pretty big number.
But it doesn't always, it's not all from leads we give, right? So when somebody joins our world, that's if they close an SOI deal. So we get a small piece of every deal they do. So I would say probably 400 of them will be leads and the other 600 to 700 will be just sphere of influence deals that people do.
Sure. Powered by your systems and models that you bring
Sure.
into their organization to catapult them and power them to grow more.
Right.
Yeah, that's incredible. Okay, so that's the operating business side. That's obviously generating a lot of capital, which allows you to move faster on the investment side. Are you also, when you look at those locations, now looking at what feeds the investment side, we have monetary opportunity that comes from those, but a lot of those locations that you called out, like Oklahoma, Utah, Colorado, those are some great investment markets too.
Right.
Are you primarily investing just on the Vegas side, or do you mirror some of those? Do those ever overlap from an opportunity side?
So that's probably a better question for Taylor, but he's on some river in Oregon with no cell service right now. So I know we've done a lot in Texas, which we don't have a team in, and we're looking at Detroit, which we don't have a team in. So, so far, no, but we should be. Right? Like we're not doing it, but we should be looking at Oklahoma and saying like, who's our boots on the ground there? The challenge is when we grow our network or our team, the people are pretty singular minded, like traditional residential real estate. So that's been part of the challenge. But ideally we would get into partnering the things up, right? And everywhere we have agents, well, I'd love to have an investment wing as well.
Well, there's no doubt to me that whatever you put your mind to will 100% explode in growth in the matter of a short time. When you so now let's pivot totally to the investment arm. You're buying 80 to 100 homes this year. and you have grown your portfolio or that section from just 300,000, not just from 300,000 to now 5 million in a short period of time. Where are you buying deals? Where are you finding them? What are you hanging on to? What does that process look like?
So we're mostly in Nevada and Arizona. We just look for small towns. We're buying, just like Brett always teaches, we're buying mobile homes on big lots.
Mm-hmm.
So the hierarchy of a deal obviously changes some, I think, a little bit with the market. So originally we were trying to wholesale as much as we could. Then wholetailing became really valuable for us as we would put in a little bit of work, we would get massive returns. So I think those are still probably our two primary things we're doing, but we are now keeping rentals, not because we want rentals, but because we want cost seg. So like, I don't like to pay taxes, period. It's like the worst. Well, I get mad at my dentist. I get mad at my accountant. And it's funny because they're like helping me, but I freaking hate them both. So now we're going to try to keep enough rentals on an annual basis that regardless what the market does, gives us the ability to not pay taxes. So we're now probably going to retain 6 to 10 properties on an annual basis that we turn into rentals, purely so that we don't have to pay taxes.
Brett has been really helping me with my language around this, so I'm going to try it out on you. You're purchasing 6 to 8 properties a month to partner with the government.
Yeah, there we go.
Such that they give you the benefit of a reduction in tax liability to create affordable housing for others.
For others, exactly. That's a great way to say it. That was awesome.
It's like they're your partner. You're not avoiding them. They're helping to co-invest with you.
Well, and so one of the books Brett gave us might have been Tax-Free Wealth.
Win-win wealth strategy.
Okay, and 100%. So I don't know that I've read that one. It was either that, Psychology of Money. Anyways, one of the ones he gave us talked about thinking of the government, basically following the government's moves on whatever they're incentivizing at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that the government's really hyped on right now is affordable housing. Yeah. So I think there's going to be even more opportunities coming up because the government is so hyped on affordable housing. So then it does get into the trailers and stuff like that. And so I love the way you said that. So Taylor and I are partnering with the federal government in an effort to help them provide affordable housing to others.
You got rid of Shaq as your partner, and
now we have the federal government.
The government. Yeah. The one I just showed you, the win-win wealth strategies, Tom Wheelwright's new book.
Okay.
And that's the one he's giving you the 7 categories, whether it's, technology and research development, energy, business, retirement savings, and affordable housing are the big key ways that the government will partner with you. So if anyone hasn't read that yet, it's an absolutely awesome book.
Well, you know what Brett's been so good at? He's been good at a lot, Caitlin, but one of the things I've enjoyed the most about Brett's mentality that's helped me is he's smart enough to not get mad, but get leveraged. And like, I think that's so important. So like for me, I've done that with social media. I watched the Social Dilemma on Netflix, and it made me so mad about social media. And so the temptation is I'm going to like delete my accounts. But what I did was I was like, how would Brett view this? Brett would go, screw that. I'm not going to delete my account. I'm going to use social media against itself to create what I want. So I was like, I don't care what my friends and family, people from church, my kids' teachers, I don't care what they think of me. I'm only going to create an audience for real estate agents. And I went from 4,000 followers to 13,000, almost 13,000 followers in a year by just seeing. So it's like, it's that mentality of like that tax-free wealth stuff, I'm so mad at the government. I hate taxes. Well, you could like Bo Gritz and go live in the desert and, like threaten to kill everybody. Or you could go like, oh, wait a minute, government's like incentivizing this. I'm going to run there and go do that. And I think it's that wealth mentality that it's such a poor person's game to get mad and like shake your fist at the sky. But it's such a wealth-minded approach that Brett takes to everything, which is like, he really doesn't care what the environment does. He's just going to find the opportunity in the environment, which is so smart.
He's really, really unbelievably good at that. He always says to me, because I tend to be a little stubborn and to maybe have that poor person's mentality of getting angry or resisting. And he says to me, Caitlin, you can be rich or you can be right.
Right.
Do you want to be right, or do you want to and argue this down till you're blue in the face? Or do you want to maybe make some pivots and adjust to the environment and find the right path?
Well, and it goes back to that. The other book I read that made a big impact was The Subtle Art of Not Giving Enough. And like that saves business relationships. It's my marriage. Like my wife and I got in an argument one time and she walked into the bathroom and I sat down and I go like, do I really give an F about this enough to like ruin my night, ruin my weekend? So I walked in and I smiled and I said, hey, sorry, I was kind of being a jerk, like gave her knuckles or whatever. And like, we moved on. And so it's just that mentality of like, you can't, like the subtle art of not giving an F is not that you don't care about anything. It's just you choose to care about certain things more than other things, which then you use to guide your decision-making. And to me, that is Brett in a nutshell. It's not that he doesn't care about things. It's that he cares about such big things that he never lets the little things really get to him, which I love.
That's exactly right. I'd like to, if it's okay with you, pivot from, so you've built out the investment side, you're generating, I just want to go back because you have some unbelievable nuggets here that I'm dying to hear. In building out the investment side, did you started with wholesale, wholetail, doing some flips, and then how did you determine building your portfolio? How do you determine red light, green light? This is what Joe and Taylor are going to hang on to. Having these scars and scabs of the previous crash.
Well, so our first rental came because a lady we knew was she's a train wreck, and and then her mom died. The estate inherited a house. She could never buy it, but she was like, hey, I'll give you guys $50,000 if you buy this house from me, and then I'll rent it for you, or buy this house for me and I'll rent it from you. So we're like, okay. So we bought a house that at the time was comped out at 250. We paid, or 220. We paid 220, but she gave us $50,000, so we really paid 170. We're like, well, I guess we have to keep this, right? And then we haven't kept a lot of rentals until cost seg became something really important to us. And just a light went off where we were like, so it's not that we choose to keep things because we like some rentals over others. It's just what we're going to do is probably keep the newest and in best shape ones for ourselves, because it'll create the least amount of rental, like my toilet is backed up, and either owner finance out or flip the crappy stuff we just don't want to be attached to. So that'll probably be part of our strategy. The reality is we really don't care. So it's a matter of, can we buy things cheap enough, get them cash flowing, refinance them out, take our money back, and then have it as a cost seg asset for us, purely so that we can go in partnership with the government rather than paying them. So
for reduction in your
it probably doesn't sound very sexy, but it's almost like if we pay 70, it's worth 110. The bank gives us back 80. We get that 110. We get a $10,000 basically tax write-off credit for it, and then we're on to the next one with that same money. We'll just go do that and then rent them out, and the service on the debt will be virtually nothing, and we should be able to cash flow the rentals and stuff like that. So it almost came as a byproduct of Taylor got really, really good at the emails, letters, phone calls, door knocking team. We've got 7 or 8 people in a room 50 feet from me that are just all day looking for properties to purchase. Because we got so good at that part, now we can go, oh, cool. Well, let's just carve off 10 of them a year to keep as rentals. They'll be cash flow positive and the bank will give us all the money back. Let's just do that.
And you have some that you've converted to owner finance notes.
Right. We started doing that pretty early. And so I'm not, I think we were doing that pretty heavy until the market just went nuts. And then so we went to Brett and we were like, hey, we could owner finance these, or we could just start turning them for like 50, 80, 100 grand at a time. And he was like, yeah, just do that as long as you can.
Totally.
So we're still doing some of that. But when our margins get slimmer, I think is when we'll move back more into the owner finance stuff. Because as long as we could keep piling up 40, 50, $60,000 closings 3 or 4, 5 times a month, we'll just keep doing that. But I think as margins are going to get tighter a little bit, we really have only lost on 1 or 2 properties out of the 70 or 80 we bought so far in the last 2 years. 100 we bought in the last 2 years. We've only gotten stung on a few, and they were ones that we bought right before the Fed started going crazy and didn't liquidate before the market reacted. So we've lost maybe a couple of grand here or there, but it was pretty quick to leverage anything we had in escrow. As we saw the market tightening up, we went to them and got like 20% price reductions on everything. So we're kind of back into our same margins that we were.
Smart, really smart. I think one of the things that you've mentioned is on the investment side, like what the market of the moment is, right? Where do we get the best possible rate of return? I think a lot of times we get stuck in this, I must buy the long-term rental that I'm going to hold on to forever, or I'm going to only invest in Airbnb, or I'm only going to wholesale, or I'm only going to flip properties. But to know and invest in the market of the moment based upon the economy, interest rates, everything from subsidy availability. There's so many things to look at to evaluate what the best vehicle is to get your best possible ROI. And I love that you guys implement that and are always striving for, like we talked about in the mastermind, the 20 to 30% return.
Right.
It's not staying in one box in one moment. It's constantly restructuring that. So,
well, the only way you could do that is by having enough opportunity or irons in the fire. If we were buying 1 or 2 properties a month, then we'd have to be very strategic about what we're buying and what we're doing with them. But the benefit of buying 5 or 6 of them a month is it gives us the ability to say, all right, well, cool, we'll carve these 2 out for that, these 2 out for that, and these 2 out for that based on whatever we need at the moment. So like we had our tax consultation with our accountant, we're like, how many properties do we need to buy next year to pretty much pay no taxes? And he was like, you're going to need to buy, you're going to need to be able to cost seg 10 to 20 properties depending on their value. We're like, all right, cool, we're on it, right? And like next year we're going to buy a building, which will enable us, like Spring Benson did it. And I don't think she paid any taxes this year because she spent $1.3 million on a building and got $130,000 tax credit basically. And so she didn't pay any taxes. So that's what really excites me is going into business with the federal government.
Your new favorite part, you and Joe.
That's my new favorite thing.
Joe and Taylor in the IRS group.
That's our new favorite thing. Yep.
Let me ask you, so in the third leg of the stool, so we had operating business here, we had our operating business, investment business, and then your network. And I think I want to spend a few minutes talking about that because I think that third leg of your stool is just a bigger example of what you just said. You said when you have a lot of irons in the fire, you can constantly be top grading or creating better opportunities because it's not your one and only. It's all your eggs are in that one exclusive basket. So you have 3 legs of your stool all generating 7 figures a year. That third leg, which allows you that when a market transition happens on one of the other legs or something else happens, you still have some strong footholding. So that third leg is an interesting one because you have owned 2 brokerages before. Mm-hmm. And then you determined moving over to a national brokerage. What spurred that decision? Because I know that couldn't have come lightly. Or what were the benefits of making that decision? Let me ask it that way.
So the benefit is, I think we've just always been bigger than our box, right? And our box a year and a half ago was the full 4 walls of our office and our state licensure in Vegas. Okay. That was really all we could do. So the benefit was we no longer have any borders on our growth. So we're able to partner with people we've respected for a long time in a collaborative environment. I'm thinking of Amy Youngren is a friend of ours in Toronto, Canada. And I reached out to Amy 8 months ago and I was like, hey, our company's going to be opening up in your area. And she was like, I'm not interested, but tell me about it. And then by the end of the call, she was like, how would it look for me? So it's an ecosystem. Like I don't think of it as a brokerage as much as I think of it as an ecosystem. Like it's being in an ecosystem that doesn't have any borders. So
Sure.
if I have somebody I respect in Toledo, Kansas, or Toledo, Ohio, or wherever, I can go to them and say, hey, I really respect you and I want to build with you, and we can bring value in each other's lives. So that was kind of at its core what got us excited. It was a big risk for us because we had 100 agents that paid us. We facilitated all their income. So it was like now transitioning into a brokerage that we don't control. I didn't love that part of it, but the growth has been explosive. So it was funny. I texted Taylor and one of our partners up in Utah 2 days ago. Facebook reminded me like, hey, this happened a year ago. And I looked and it said, a year ago, I made an announcement that we had 300 partners in our national network. And now, like 2 weeks ago, we just hit 1,400.
Just here at 1,400.
Yeah, so the growth has been pretty crazy. So like for us, I think what got us excited was it was an early opportunity. So the company's still really young, but it's just, they offered us the ecosystem we wanted that we would have built ourselves. But even talking to Brett was like, to build this, to go public, to get licensed in all these states and provinces, he's like, it's a 5-year roadmap or something where they had already built it out. So for us, it was a matter of leveraging the ecosystem as it existed. And so the cool thing is for us, it's pretty much if we have an idea, the answer is yes. Like, hey, I'd like to take the Joe Taylor Group to 7 or 8 different states. Yep, you can do that. I'd like to host events across North America. So we like next week we'll be in San Antonio, then I'm going to Toronto, then I'm going to Denver. So I get to do a lot of public speaking, which is something I enjoy. And then I get to connect again, probably fueled out of loneliness. There is something like you guys provide a room for us to collaborate with other people, and which is rad. And that happens at Tom Ferry, it happens at Cheplack, it happens at Brett, it happens at Gubernick. Like people, they provide rooms where people look around and go like Eric Cliffle's one of my favorite guys. Like whenever I see him, I give him a big hum. Him and Carrie are great, right? So you provided that room where we could do that. What I love is our whole ecosystem now is one big, the North America is one big room for us. So it's like, if I can connect with somebody on a business level that way, I don't have to charge them for coaching or whatever. It's just, they're in my network. So, hey, you need me, what can I do? You need me to come and speak. You need me to restructure your commission statements, all that stuff. That's what I love about it is it's just this crazy ecosystem that allows us to go, hey, we want to have a team in Washington, DC, our nation's capital. So we find a guy and we're like, hey, we're going to run all the ads. You attract all the agents. And now the Joe Taylor Group is in DC. It's like, it's a super cool ecosystem for us.
That's incredible. I love the core of the reason and that the ecosystem and the ability to connect and provide value to others. So y'all can grow together is incredible. So I love it.
Well, it's cool to not have to choose. It's cool to not have to choose between helping people and creating wealth. Like it's like awesome because when I owned a brokerage, there was a tug of war between myself and the agents. So if Taylor and I wanted to increase our brokerage profitability, the only string to pull on was the agent's profitability.
Yep.
And so there was this tug of war between us and the agents. That tug of war doesn't exist anymore. Like if someone comes into my world and I help them, there's no tug of war between us, which is rad.
Sure. You're equally yoked. You're pulling in the same direction. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Okay. I have a couple of my favorite questions to ask you, if you don't mind. We'll rapid fire. What is an unusual habit or absurd thing that you love?
Wow. I'm fully addicted to caffeine. That's a bad habit. I think the absurd habit I have is I'm not overly talented in anything. The only talent I do have is I'm a really consistent person.
Okay.
So like with our marketing stuff, well, I've taught hundreds of people to market the way we market, and none of them ever do it. So then when I go back to like, well, why do I do it? I think it's because I'm almost Rain Man level obsessed over just doing the same things consistently. So like I do CrossFit, which most people are like, no, you don't, because they see I'm not super yoked, right? I'm not good at anything at CrossFit. Like I'm not the best guy doing pull-ups. I'm not the best running. I hate running. I row. My deadlift isn't the highest. My back squat's not the highest. But if you ask them, like, what is Joe's talent? They would say, well, he just shows up every day. So I guess it's a weird habit I have is I'm just really consistent in a super geeky way. Like I do the same things over and over and over again in a really geeky, nerdy way.
Well, you know what they say about consistency. Consistent efforts lead to consistent results. Go figure.
Right. It's true.
It's not about the
I'm also a weirdly extroverted introvert. So like one of the challenges that Taylor and I have in the real estate space is we're both LDS. We don't drink alcohol. So we always struggle in social environments.
Yeah.
So it's like even at Brett stuff, it's like, all right, guys, we're heading to the bar. And Taylor and I are like, all right, well, let's go watch a movie. Right. It's just not it's been so we owned a brokerage with a third partner and it drove him crazy that Taylor and I never went to cocktail parties and social events. And number one, Taylor's got larynx issues with his voice. He cannot speak in loud rooms.
Right.
And number two, it's awkward for both of us when everybody's like, hey, come have a shot with me. And we're like, we don't do shots. Right. And so that's another kind of weird thing about us is we're pretty committed guys from a disciplined religious side of things. So then it creates weird situations where like there is no like sending people a bottle of tequila and stuff. It's just not in our world, but it is a part of real estate culture. So that's been a struggle for us a little bit as well.
Sure. I definitely respect the decision and the discipline and the dedication there. And I can certainly understand the challenge in our industry specifically. It is a busy place.
It really is.
So let me ask you this. When you feel overwhelmed or unfocused, or you temporarily lose focus because you are the consistency guy, what do you do? What questions do you ask yourself, or how do you realign if you do ever get off of your consistency train?
Checklists are big for me. Like Johnny Richardson, who was on here, I don't know if he checked off or not, but he did 75 hard. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to do that. So I did 75 hard. And what I found the brilliance in 75 hard was the checklists. And like every day you get that little endorphin release when you're like, I drank a gallon of water. I read my 10 pages of a book. So when I get unfocused, I'll go up to my whiteboard and I'll just do my organize tomorrow, today stuff. And I'm like, all right, here's the 3 things I got to accomplish. And I will literally for myself, draw a box, draw the 3 things I need to do. And then I'll do one and I'll walk up to the board and I'll check it off. So for me, I get very granular if I lose focus in that I try to evaluate what are the most important things I can do right now. And then I build a checklist to make myself do them.
I like that a lot. So let's take that same mindset. If you were talking to a newer agent or a newer business owner,
Right.
And either they're new to the industry, or one of the places I think a lot of our audience and audience, like we're on stage, our network and our group that we really, work with a lot, they tend to be in that player coach role.
Right.
They're both in sales manager role plus CEO, or in production and sales manager and CEO role. What advice would you give to someone who's newer or younger in this industry or in this world?
I just think there's power in partnership. And it doesn't have to be a 50-50 partnership like Taylor and I have. I think joining a team is a partnership.
Yep.
I just think our industry is plagued with commission split obsession. So like if a new real estate agent came to me and said, hey, what should I do? I was like, go join a team of people that know how to generate leads and know how to teach you to be a realtor. If it was another industry, it would just be like, who is the who in your world that's going to tell you you're full of crap? Like, who is the person that's going to tell you like, no, that sounds cool. It's actually a really bad idea. Right. So I think it's hard. The biggest challenge I've found is as Taylor and I have succeeded, it's hard to find people that could give us advice. Mm-hmm. Not because we're so good, but because it's hard when you're doing 500 transactions a year, it's really hard to take a ton of advice from someone that's doing 60. because they just don't understand your world, right? That's like somebody riding a bike giving instructions to somebody driving a race car. It's like two different worlds. So I think the other piece of advice I would give someone in any industry is get yourself a coach who's done the work. What I love about Brett, the reason Taylor and I can go all in on Brett is because he is now where we want to be. I love the other coaches out there in the real estate space that are not realtors, but I struggle because I have a hard time taking advice from someone who hasn't been where I want to be. So that's why I've always found value in Brett, is because there are big time real estate coaches who are wonderful and they make a ton of money and they lead a ton of agents, but they've never had to have a discussion with an agent in a specific way around commission splits or around why time in the office is important or around why, like, I know you think this is your sphere of influence, but it's actually a team generated deal. Like they've had theoretical conversations, but what I love about Brett is he'll say, well, what's your split? Well, I tried that. It didn't work because of this. What if you did it this way? So if you're a lawyer, if you're an insurance agent, if you're whatever, find people who have been where you are trying to go and then get in their proximity to where you can take their advice. There have been times in my life, a lot of times, where I don't take advice because I'm prideful, but it's easy to take advice from someone who's been where who is where you're trying to get. So
that is a great piece of advice that I will take your advice. That was a great piece of advice. We want to definitely open it up for some questions. And as we do, if y'all want to unmute yourself or put them in the chat box, we did have a few people on Facebook go bananas that they really like your consistency in a geeky way. They think that's an awesome talent.
Yay.
So that's great. If anyone else has some questions, unmute yourself or put them in the chat box. I have one while we're waiting. Were you a Raiders fan? I see your Raiders thing back there before they came to Vegas, or is that geographically desirable?
It's geographically. So in Vegas, we are entertainment orphans, right? Like the only things of entertainment we've ever created is the UNLV basketball team from like 1986 to 1992. We were pretty legit. The Imagine Dragons, the Killers, and because my friend's the bassist of the band, the Neon Trees. Like that's the only things we've ever created. So any entertainment we receive in Vegas is always supplanted until the Golden Knights. So when the Raiders came, I'm trying, right? Like I'm trying to be a Raiders fan, but it's not natural. But I'm trying. Like it's easy. I mean, when you turn on Monday Night Football and they're like, all right, Vegas has 1st and 10, there's so much pride there, right? Like I can watch anything Team USA, like women's volleyball, water polo, track, the dumb event where the people ski and shoot things. Like I can watch anything because they have my country on their back. Yeah. I'm in. So now the Raiders are representing Vegas, so it's coming more natural, but no, I wasn't. I was a Cowboys fan, if anything, as a kid. But again, we've always just picked whatever. Like I was a Warriors fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was at Game 7, Warriors versus Cavs, when LeBron James blocked Andre Iguodala's layup and then went down and they won and all this. So I was at that game because I was quote unquote a Warriors fan. But in Vegas, we pick teams and have weird affiliations with them. But I'm trying with the Raiders.
I shared with you before, my brother's a diehard Raiders fan. I am not. Yeah. License plate before. He lives in New York now. So he's a Raiders fan in New York, plus the president of the Young Republicans Club. That's things funny. What else is a part of in New York? He's like the only guy. So anyway, any other questions? I see Eric Cliffle's face. I feel like Eric Cliffle has a question.
He called me a brown noser and I just said, well, you can't, like, that's like my wife saying I'm brown nosing her. I just love him. So what am I supposed to say?
Hey man, I love. That's one of my favorite things out there. Love and consistency, right? Consistency over time compounds.
Yep. 100%.
I will look forward to seeing the two of you do a giant hug together at the mastermind in a couple of weeks. We've got just a month from now. So without further ado, Joe, thank you so much I really, really appreciate you being here with us and sharing some of this. If y'all have questions for Joe, though, about any of his 3 pillars that he went through, as far as his operating business, investment, or his network, and have some questions, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Instagram. It's
Okay.
it's just at Joe Herrera. That's the easiest way. I respond to Instagram messages before I respond to text messages. I end up getting more spam via text than I do via Insta. So Instagram is kind of my preferred mode of communication.
Perfect. And here is how to spell his name if you have any questions. That is him, the man, the myth, the legend, and now our dear friend to all of us. And then if you all have any questions about Be Wealthy or want to get in touch with him and cannot on your own, you can schedule some time with us here and we will help answer any questions you have and connect you directly. All right, guys, thank you so much.
Awesome.
Appreciate
Thank you.
it. And y'all have a good one.